Here's the latest National Weather Service hazards map from this evening, and let's face it, there is a lot going on. From severe weather concerns into parts of the Gulf Coast, as well as the southeast over the next few days, as well as a big snowstorm and blizzard over parts of the north. This storm is going to be very action-packed. In this video, I will detail everything you need to know from the severe weather side to the cold side, and on an Arctic blast that's on the way. On your screen right now is a look at those weather alerts as of your Sunday evening. We've still got some lingering weather alerts that are into parts of the northeast from that winter storm, but our new winter storm getting those brown colors on your screen into parts of the south, indicating some wind alerts. We've got all sorts of winter weather alerts coming out of parts of the Four Corners, blizzard alerts into what far southwestern Kansas, the Panhandle of Oklahoma, winter weather alerts all the way on over into the Midwest as well. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe for more forecasts just like this. But let's get right into the severe weather side first. Skip about 7 minutes into the video to get your winter weather side of things. Now, your severe weather outlook for your Monday, January 8th, we've got a slight to enhanced risk for severe weather level 2 to 3 over parts of the Gulf Coast, including parts of New Orleans. And this does include this tornado threat with a hatched area. There is a 10 to 14% chance of a EF2 or greater tornado within 25 miles of a point from parts of eastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and southern Alabama on over into the Florida Panhandle. You need to be really weather aware. Now let's get right into the severe ingredients. Let's see what's on the table and what will support and what won't support severe thunderstorms. In the moisture department, those blues and purples moving through parts of Houston, New Orleans tomorrow afternoon, really indicating that we're going to have ample moisture, plenty of buoyancy for these severe thunderstorms as they move into temperatures that are going to be in the 70s. It's going to be well warm enough for these storms, even as this pushes eastward into our Tuesday. And then in terms of the low-level jet stream, let's see if we're going to have any sorts of yellows, oranges, and reds pushing into parts of the mid-south, as we'll have that southerly flow kind of contrasting from the westerly flow of that mid and upper-level jet. Sure enough, look at this, some of those colors into parts of Arkansas, parts of Louisiana, as well as the mid-south. All these areas, we're seeing this southerly flow in the low-level jet. That big wind field that we're going to have developing out of the system is also going to help to create some of that wind shear, some spin that's going to help to spin up some of those tornadoes. And then in terms of severe weather instability, anything above greens and yellows is really where we're worried about severe weather. And once again, we start to see that develop in southern Louisiana into tomorrow afternoon. So we have that on the table as well. That pushes eastward tomorrow night, going into our Tuesday. So really a dangerous threat here. And let's get right into the timing of that right now. Now, as we make our way through our Sunday night and into our Monday, we'll see this line of storms pushing through parts of Oklahoma and Texas. This could feature some 50, 60, maybe even 70 mile per hour wind gusts as it pushes on through. But really the reason I'm showing you this is the start of that whole cold front, okay? And as that continues to make its way on off towards the east, we're also going to have a warm front lifting south to north, a southerly flow into our Monday afternoon, and this is going to create some of those discrete supercell thunderstorms that could tap into that really ample environment for these storms. And notice some of those isolated cells through parts of Tyler, Texas, on down towards Houston, out ahead of the main line. Also notice there's kind of this pocket of some more messy weather out ahead of the line even itself, and well ahead of it into parts of Baton Rouge, the I-10 corridor there in the early afternoon of tomorrow. There's that line with some embedded supercells still possible along it, as well as the more elevated damaging wind threat in eastern Texas through that Monday afternoon time frame. But again, we're really watching all the way through the afternoon these cells that are going to be making their way through New Orleans, through southern Mississippi, out ahead of the line. Still monitoring that, but we're also, of course, still monitoring that linear segment of storms that's in the Arklatex. Up towards Little Rock, could we see some brief damaging winds out of this line of showers and storms? Certainly could. But look at how these cells really progress eastward, and we start to see the convergence of the warmer air mass and the colder air mass here as we go into the evening. I think the evening hours will be a very dangerous time here. And look at how this kind of merges into one little, or not really little, it's a big mass of some rain, some storms. We're watching the severe weather potential from Baton Rouge on up through south central Mississippi on over even towards Birmingham. Could we monitor the chance for some severe weather there? Certainly could. And look at how this kind of progresses east towards New Orleans. Again, look at those those isolated cells through parts of Mobile, Alabama, Gulfport, Mississippi, with that southerly flow coming right out of the Gulf. That is really going to cause that warm air to move on northward, and that is why those discrete cells will be something to watch all the way through the evening. New Orleans getting in on the final end of that line into our early Tuesday morning. Now your significant tornado parameter goes all the way from pretty much a 1 to a 10. Some of these numbers are going to be close to a 5 to a 6 here in the Houston area, on up towards College Station tomorrow afternoon. So again, some of these storms that form out earlier than the line might not have as good of an environment to tap on into, but the storms right along this line that will have the damaging wind threat as well. The ones that can be discrete supercells, they will have that tornado potential, and that will continue along that line all the way into our Tuesday here. So really something to monitor. I mean, look at how that moves its way on over towards Georgia, the Carolinas as well. We'll have that southerly flow coming right off the Atlantic to support those storms. So a lot of things to keep in mind with this whole setup, including the fact that there's plenty of ingredients in place, and we will be seeing multiple rounds of storms over the same areas. Eventually, though, that front will get rid of the energy as cooler air pushes in. Now on your screen is that severe weather risk as we go into our Tuesday. It's enhanced over southeast Alabama, South Georgia, as well as parts of the Florida Panhandle as well, getting in on that enhanced risk. And that goes all the way on up here into parts of the Carolinas as well. So we'll monitor the chance with the slight risk, at least there in the Carolinas, as well as parts of central Florida. We will be monitoring another damaging wind and tornado threat day as these storms progress their way eastward along that line segment. And with that daytime heating that we could get here into parts of the Carolinas, that could be where we actually get kind of a secondary threat that's a little unexpected to sprout on up. And let me show you what I mean there. We're taking a look here at the NAM model on your screen. Noticing this yellow area I'm circling, this is where I think that secondary threat could get going here for another round of tornadoes. South Georgia, parts of South Carolina, maybe even into North Carolina through our afternoon on your Tuesday here. Notice we've got this linear segment of storms. It's quite obvious moving through parts of central Georgia all the way on down into the Florida Panhandle there into our afternoon hours. But what's really interesting is, will we actually see convection out ahead of that line? Because if that does get going, I do think the environment will be, pretty usable for these storms to tap on into. And notice how those push through central North Carolina as well as southern Virginia there. We could monitor even some of those storms. So a lot to keep watch of in the severe weather department, as well as some of these isolated cells on the southern end of the line towards Orlando and Tampa Tuesday afternoon. So of course I want you to keep in mind those severe weather threats, but I also want you to be watching your day-by-day WPC, which is your Weather Prediction Center flood threat, and it is moderate, level 3 of 4 over parts of southeast Louisiana, southern Mississippi as we make our way through our Monday, but even parts of Alabama, Georgia, Florida, even on up towards Memphis area. All these areas you need to be monitoring at least a level 1 or level 2 flood threat. And then the shifts to the east coast, including parts of New Jersey, the mid-Atlantic there especially, getting in on this flood threat, but all the way down to the Carolinas and Georgia as we go into our Tuesday. So monitoring this flood threat there all the way on up to Boston. So really a big expansive flood threat at that point. And then as we make our way into our Wednesday, we'll see the flood threat at least confined to Maine as the system pushes out, but still existing in parts of the U.S. How much rainfall are we looking at? Looking anywhere from an inch plus in any of those purple shades on your screen. The red shades, though, and into the yellowish colors that you see into parts of the Gulf Coast, the Carolinas, and the Mid-Atlantic and the southern New England. So notice I mentioned a lot of areas there. This is going to impact many people. 2 to 4 inches plus of rainfall. And again, in those yellow colors, maybe upwards of 4 inches of rain. I guarantee you someone will see a half foot of rainfall out of this event. So you need to monitor that flood threat closely. All right, and then there's this wintry side of the system. Here's your winter storm severity index that we have issued by the Weather Prediction Center. Low pressure going to ride along like this in that line I'm about to draw here, and we're going to see areas from parts of Kansas, Nebraska on up into Iowa, Missouri, on over into Illinois, southern Wisconsin, in that range of zones I just circled there. That's where we're going to have significant winter impacts out of this winter storm, and I think this will actually shift a little bit further north as well, as some severe impacts could even push into parts of central Wisconsin as well as northern Michigan. So let's get into the timing of this. Starting out with those winter weather alerts. White is where we have those winter storm warnings, winter storm watches in the blue colors. I'm sure we'll continue to see watches and warnings fill to the east and into parts of Michigan. The red colors there and that you see on the bottom left side of your screen, that's where we actually have blizzard warnings in effect for this storm system. Let's play this out. So here we go into our Monday morning. Same time we could begin to see a severe weather threat amp on up over parts of the south central and the Gulf Coast. We're going to have a big snowfall here over parts of northern Kansas, southeastern parts of Nebraska, and Lincoln included, Topeka, Kansas, all these areas getting in on some of this heavy snowfall. This will be a very heavy wet snow, so it's going to be coming down and accumulating quite quickly on those grassy surfaces especially. Notice how as we make our way through the midday time frame, we'll continue to see this progress into northern Missouri, parts of southwest Iowa, so around 1 p.m. At central time, we might begin to see places like Des Moines get in on some of this, especially to the southwest side of the city. Will it start off as some snow even into parts of central Missouri? Certainly possible. Notice how some of that snow will continue to break out through that line as we go towards the colder part of the day and the evening. And look at how this also moves towards parts of southwestern Illinois into the Chicago region by the time we go 8, 9, 10 o'clock central time. This whole area I just circled from eastern Nebraska all the way on over to northern Indiana. Fair game for some very heavy and maybe even wet snowfall here, really coming on down quickly during the evening time frame of our Monday, while that severe outbreak is still still going on down towards the south probably at that time. Those blues moving into Chicago, a prolonged period of some pretty heavy snowfall through the Chicagoland area, but we are going to have this warm front. That's really the whole reason that there's a severe weather outbreak to the south. That's lifting northward through parts of Illinois and Indiana throughout the day, and that is really going to kind of put a little bit of a damper on some of that snowfall. And look at how some ice, some sleet tries to get in the mix through Springfield, Illinois, through Indianapolis, in fact, turning over to rain there. And eventually, I think it will turn over to rain in Chicago, and especially on the southern side of town. You notice that with the NAM model, playing this out with the NAM model further. Some ice over there into parts of Appalachia as the system starts, but that warm front boundary is going to be pushing northward. And watch how parts of Wisconsin really stay in the snow overall. But if you're in a place like Chicago, turning over to some rain. In a place like Detroit, turning over to some rain. So all these areas that might start off as snowfall, there's going to be millions of you who start as snow, turn over to rain with that warm front. And the same goes with this heavy band of snow through parts of PA, as well as parts of New York as that heads on off towards the northeast. And watch how all these areas that are in the snowfall back on off towards the west, those stay snow that I just circled. The one in the northeast, though, it is going to get forced northeastward because of that warm front. So really interesting to see how the whole system kind of lays out and plays out. But look at how that snowfall just kind of pushes through Maine. So remember, in Maine, you have that flood threat as we make our way towards the back end of the system. It's because that snow is turning on over to rain. And then also in places like Nashville, Tennessee, parts of the Ohio Valley, we could see some brief heavy wet snowfall at the back end of the system here. This being as we go into our Tuesday and into our Wednesday, that wraps back around. So places like Chicago could get another round of snowfall at the tail end of the system as well. In terms of the forecast snowfall accumulation using the model ratio and the model blend as we make our way through our Thursday, heaviest snowfall is going to be confined to the Mountain West, but also the stripe of northern Kansas, eastern Nebraska, parts of Iowa, northern Missouri, all these areas in your purples on your screen. That's 6+ inches of snowfall. And then also notice how Chicago, you're kind of in that 2 to 5 inch zone. Places like Milwaukee, though, closer to a foot of snow possible. Des Moines, you could also pick up a foot of snow. And again, maybe some snow into parts of the northeast as well. But that is just going to be kind of as the system starts on off, and not down the actual line with that system. All right, here's your NAM model wind gusts, because the wind are going to be a big problem with this system. 40, 50, 60 mile per hour wind gusts from the south out ahead of this Monday afternoon. Into those severe zones. We've got the blizzard going on here over parts of the southern high plains there. So really, some of these gusts 50 miles per hour into parts of Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi, while it's 50 miles per hour over western Kansas, the panhandle of Nebraska. Here we go as we go Monday night going into our Tuesday. That line of showers and storms, even if you're not seeing severe weather, we could still see 50, 60 mile per hour gusts push through parts of the mid-south, even the Ohio Valley. Gusty 40 to 50 back into the plains. Gusty around Chicago 40 to 50 as well. This is going to be a really windy system. We'll continue to see those wind alerts kind of get forced out with this system from the Weather Prediction Center, from your National Weather Service offices. And then along the East Coast here, we'll also see some big winds. Look at how these winds really pick on up as we go Tuesday night into our Wednesday over parts of Long Island, Cape Cod, southern New England. 50, 60, 70, even upwards of 75 miles per hour worth of wind here right along that coastline. This is going to cause power outages, I guarantee you. All right, let's get into those final recap details here of that winter storm. Heavy snow creating hazardous travel, delivering heavy snow in the plains and Midwest on Monday and Tuesday, with heavy wet snow developing in the central Appalachians and interior Northeast Tuesday night. Heaviest snow totals are most likely in parts of the Midwest. Local maxima up to 12 inches likely. Again, this is going to be a dangerous blizzard, 50 mile per hour wind gusts. But winds are going to be a big problem for everyone out of the system, as you can see on that graphic on the bottom right. I'm showing you those max wind gusts for your area. Significant river, flash, and coastal flooding likely over parts of the east, with damaging wind gusts again continuing to be a problem, and those could lead to power outages. But in terms of the flooding, widespread and potentially significant river and flash flooding likely for parts of the Gulf Coast and eastern U.S. early this week, with powerful onshore flow there in the mid-Atlantic as well, in the southeast and the northeast. All those areas could see some coastal inundation as well. And one other thing I wanted to point out, we do have an Arctic blast on the way. The polar vortex is about to come on out of the Pacific Northwest. Essentially came from Canada, now it's coming on into the United States. Eventually everyone in the U.S. will be impacted by this, but while this sits here with negative daytime high temperatures over parts of the northern plains as we head our way towards the end of the week and towards this upcoming weekend, That's going to continue to create winter storms off here through parts of the Midwest as well as parts of the eastern U.S. So what that's really doing is just bringing that cold air in. And I'll provide more details on really what this cold blast is going to do in upcoming videos. But I really wanted to focus in on the next few days of threats in this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please hit subscribe. I know it was a long one. Might have been a little rough. But that's it for this video.